when this story broke last night, it was truly extraordinary, wasn't it? Pagers being used by Hezbollah, exploding, a dozen dead and nearly 3,000 in hospital. Wow, we all thought. Well, it's happened again today. This time, it's happening with walkie-talkies. Don't yet know the full figures. The initial numbers we were told was 9 people killed and 300 others injured. So, that is completely extraordinary. And yet, Israel have quite a history of this. As long ago as 2000, they managed to kill an activist with a booby-trapped mobile phone. And in 2020, an Iranian nuclear scientist was assassinated in Iran by a remote-controlled machine gun. So when it comes to this sort of thing, the Israelis are very, very clever. And I can tell you that in the last hour or so, the Israeli defense minister has said, we have launched a new phase of war, which is them saying, yep, it was us. Leaves me asking all sorts of questions. If they can blow up pagers and walkie-talkies, are any of us at any point vulnerable with new batches of phones? Or even, you could go as far as to say, lithium batteries in motor cars. It would appear that this actually happened with small amounts of explosive that were placed inside the devices, but nobody absolutely as yet knows for certain. What we do know is these batches were manufactured and came from Taiwan. But I wonder what it all means for the Middle East. Iran, how are they going to respond? Will they respond? It's a difficult one. I'm joined by Lloyd Russell-Moyle, former MP for Brighton and Hove, and Kwasi Kwarteng, former Tory MP and Minister. Lloyd, quite extraordinary events, but funny, isn't it? Israel, this very high-tech state, and yet on October the 7th, they were caught with the door open. Seems bizarre.
Yes, but there's been lots of criticisms, haven't there, about the intelligence on October the 7th. I think this, there will be some that worry that it's a new phase of war, as the Secretary of Defence said. I actually, and I'm not the biggest cheerleader for Israel out there, but I must say, targeted killings of belligerents in this kind of manner seems far better than bombing and mass captivity, which is what they have done elsewhere.
That's a fair point.
So if it's a more targeted phase of belligerents killing belligerents and civilians not... you'll always get some...
There was a 10-year-old girl killed.
You will always get some, but one 10-year-old girl out of 3,000 compared to what we're seeing in Gaza. Actually, I would welcome... I don't want any war, but I would welcome, if we're going to have war, something that's more targeted and
without huge civilian collateral.
Less civilian damage.
I agree completely with Lloyd on that. Clearly it's much better that people who are belligerents, who are activists, are the ones being targeted, as opposed to indiscriminate families, children that you're seeing in Gaza. I think the real question mark, there's still going to be lots and lots of question marks about how they did it. I haven't quite got my head around it.
I suspect we'll never quite know.
It's pretty extraordinary. And also, you mentioned the fact that it was a Taiwan company, but the Taiwan company, I read, are blaming their suppliers in Hungary. Yeah. So nobody's really...
Well, I tell you what we'll do, before we get on to what the implications are regionally. I'm going to get Carlos Perez on down the line, Director of his Security Intelligence, worked for the government of Puerto Rico, helping to secure networks. Thank you for joining us, Carlos, on the programme. How worried should we be? How worried should we be about any modern devices, given what's happened here?
I would say in terms of explosion, not that much. In terms of the devices being used for eavesdropping and for gathering information, I do believe that would be a higher risk than them being used in a kinetic type of way.
Yeah, although if a lithium battery does explode, and we've had a spate in and around London of electric bikes, people leave them in the hallway, the lithium battery explodes, the house burns down. There is still a risk with lithium batteries on their own, isn't there?
Yes, there's always a risk with lithium batteries. That's why when you board an airplane, there's a limit in terms of the weight of the battery and the capacity that you can actually bring.
Back to the technicals of what happened. So, as I understand it, it was a Taiwanese company that got the contract, but obviously these goods have to be shipped. What do you think happened from a technical perspective?
I believe what we are seeing is a supply chain attack. This is falls in line with the MO that the Israelis have used before in targeted attacks against Hezbollah and Hamas, where they have actually modified cell phones with explosives before for specific targeted assassinations. We have even seen Hezbollah use this same technique against the Israelis when they modified a cell phone with explosive that then was brought over into their Unit 8200 for examination and then exploded, injuring several of their personnel. What happened was that as this was traversing their SIGINT and HUMINT units, human intelligence and signal intelligence, got information that this shipment was going on. They decided to intercept that shipment at some point during its process of moving over and then modified the equipment. More than likely, they got an early copy so their technical services could actually learn how to work, how they should be modified, how they should be tampered. There more than likely was some testing of this. And this is a process that more than likely took multiple months to pull off. We have even seen the United States do this as the NSA. When the Snowden leaks happened, we saw that the NSA actually intercepted Cisco Dell equipment as it was being shipped and modified it for eavesdropping and also for remote access.
Interesting. So this is something that governments, and in particular importers, are going to have to look out for more and more as the years go by.
Yes, they're going to have to do this. And I think Israel did a measured approach here when they took these actions. They know that this is a capability that now, in the lingo of intelligence service, is going to be burned. That is something that now we're going to see these organizations are going to be taking a lot more care of. They're going to be dismantling equipment as they get lots of that equipment. They're going to be doing x-rays of that. So this was a capability that they decided to either send a message or do what we call battle space preparation. And it is something that more than likely they won't be able to leverage as highly in the future.
Carlos Perez, thank you very much indeed for coming on and giving us a technical view. That was interesting, Lloyd, wasn't it, what he was saying? There's obviously been a lot more of this going on than perhaps we'd realised.
Sure.
Yes, I mean, clearly, I think we've always known that there's phone bugging. And we've always known that Israel is one of those countries that leads in this ability to access your data on your phone, but there are other countries that are as well. But this explosion stuff is quite interesting, isn't it? That it's happened on both directions.
Yeah.
That it has been,
I didn't know that until...
No idea.
I had no idea about that.
I suspect what it will do is an end to the bulk purchase of any products. People instead will source it by just going into random shops.
But I think the point that was made, that Carlos made about governments being particularly aware, I hadn't thought of that. Because obviously you think the terrorists are going to be very frightened and, they won't be able to turn the switch on without maybe, being slightly paranoid. But actually, it's something that could be used offensively in a state-to-state conflict. And that, I think, is pretty terrifying for governments and people who are, looking after them.
Well, it is. There's no turning back the tech clock, is there?
That's exactly right. And they're going to have to be much more aware of it. I think, in terms of the wider implications, I think Iran, because as you mentioned earlier, their nuclear scientist was gunned down by a remotely controlled machine gun. Yeah. So a lot of this technology, I think we're just seeing the start of it. And I think people are going to have to be much, much more careful, particularly, who are waging wars against Israel.
Is it possible, Kwasi? It was very interesting to listen to Lloyd earlier because, he understatedly said he's not a great fan of Israel. but if they're going to take out combatants... Yeah. This hasn't met, has it, as yet, with the level of condemnation?
No, because people can see who the bad guys are. Yeah. They can see that Hezbollah is, a violent organisation. And if Israel choose to defend themselves against that specific threat, I think broad-minded, fair-minded people can see that makes sense. Whereas bombing, schools and hospitals full of women and children who aren't anything to do with...
Can I just put the Israeli side of that? Not intentionally.
I agree. Sorry, I should have been more careful with my words. Collateral damage in somewhere like Gaza, which is very densely populated. I mean, I went there as an MP 12 years ago, very densely populated. Yeah. That's going to be obviously a lot more controversial than Israel attacking and essentially defending themselves against belligerents.
Now, you've also got, of course, other organisations, Hamas, the Houthis, similarly funded by Iran. What do the Iranians do next, Lloyd Rossomore?
Well, do the Iranians escalate? They have been quite good so far at trying to stop escalation. Israel has done a number of attacks now, even into Iran and and to their proxies. And Iran has not wanted to escalate, partly because I think Iran knows that in a full-out war of escalation, they would probably be on the losing side.
Against America.
Against America, but probably even just against Israel, supported by America. It doesn't need to be a direct Iran-America war. So I think that they have held back. The problem is, as casualties stack up, do the Iranians feel that they need to engage or not? And of course, we have now a new president in Iran that has pledged a more within the Iranian context, a more open view of the West, renegotiating some of the I say within the Iranian context, not within our context.
Okay, but
and so I think at the moment we don't quite know where Iran sits, and there will be a power struggle in Tehran tonight with the hardliners saying we need to hit back, and there will be the moderates who did win a recent election who are saying, well, hang on, let's be a bit careful, and that is very difficult for us to work out.
The hardliners, my view, is that they will look at this technology. The fact we're talking about this shows how remarkable technology is.
This is extraordinary. Taking the morality out of it, it is an extraordinary
thing. And the people in Iran, the mullahs in Iran, the people running the government in Iran, they will be all over this. And they'll be trying to figure out, more actively than we are, how this happened.
How to do it back.
Exactly. But I think it's scary. Sure. But actually, I think it's a deterrent. I think Israel know what they were doing. They're saying to the world, look, we've got this technology, we can get you anywhere, essentially. And I think the mullahs will show restraint. That's my view.
Let's hope you are right, both of you.